I thought I would quickly jump on and just do a few things specifically on Vogue, just because there seems to be a bit of confusion around all of the different ways that you can use Vogue, and I specifically wanted to cover why Vogue is different to other systems out there that's very similar. So I feel like a lot of people out there have tried similar systems and they're comparing the two and then saying that, you know, Vogue might not be as strong as the other systems. And even though the systems are similar, they're not the same. They're not exactly the same systems. And we've chosen to run with our Vogue system the way that we do it for very specific reasons. This is a professional system. This is not a system that anybody can use, just anybody can use at home. As much as I'd like the Vogue to be a one-size-fits-all system, unfortunately, it's not that simple. So the Vogue tips come pre-made with an apex gap built into the tips, so that gap there, which naturally gets filled with your elastics when you're applying the tip, and that's the bit that gives you the strength. The tip at the back here is extremely flexible, and it's thin, and as you move towards the front of the free edge, the tip becomes thicker. So along the sides here, if you look at like the way the light jumps off of the tips, they're considerably thicker at the front than they are like even halfway up the nail. Hi Jolene, I'll get to that question in a second, sorry. Let me just quickly finish this thought. So the nails can be quite flexible closer to the nail bed with the system. And this is the biggest reason why you need to perform a float coat over the tips. And when I say a float coat, that's not just painting a coat of elastics over the top. Generally when you're doing shorter nails, so you're cutting these nails down, just a thin painted coat of elastic, or well, a base coat, painted coat of elastics should give you enough strength. But when you're wearing the tips at this length, especially if the built-in apex isn't where your client needs the strength, you need to adjust that with your elastics. And that's the biggest difference between our system and other systems, is that our system really allows you as the professional to be able to adjust this system to suit each and every client that you're applying it to. Because as much as that we want that apex to fit absolutely everybody, realistically, depending on how long they're wearing the nails and how long their natural nail beds are, that apex placement's not necessarily going to be in the correct spot for that client. And this is the biggest reason why that float coat of elastics is needed over the top, and this is where you as a nail technician, your professional training and experience comes in, so that you can adjust that apex to suit the client's needs. So that was the first thing I wanted to cover. Just bear that in mind. What I wanted to do today is I wanted to do a full application on this nail here, explaining the whole process to you guys. And then if we have time, I wanted to show you what I do instead of soaking off. So the biggest thing that is attractive about this system is the fact that you don't have to file the nails into shape, that you get that perfect shape every time. And the bulk of you are opting to use the system like that. And that's perfectly fine, but I wanted to show you what I do when I do that, because I do take my system off frequently. I'm especially doing that quite a bit at the moment, because I am trying different products and different techniques. We're hoping to launch a few new products soon, and I'm testing all of these products to make sure that they can withstand everything that we need from it. So at the moment I'm taking mine off quite regularly, and I wanted to show you how to do that without necessarily actually physically having to soak off all of the product off of the nails, which I think is the way to go, just because you'll find that in the long run that would be better for your client's natural nails. So, Jolene, just to go to your question, why would one choose the system over acrylic? You as a nail technician need to have a consultation with your clients, and determine which the best system would be, well, what the best system would be for that client. I have a lot of texts coming in going, my clients just want SNS, or the dipping system. That's all they want, but it doesn't last on their nails because XYZ, blah, blah, blah. At the end of the day, when your client is sitting in front of you, as much as we want to give them what they want, we need to assess their lifestyle, assess what type of design they want, what type of shape they want, what length they want, and then determine whether or not the system is the best system for them. I personally love the system due to its flexibility. Okay, so Elastix is an amazing product that adheres to nails beautifully. It is a soft, flexible gel, which will mean that if you have people with very thin, brittle nails, Elastix will adhere to those nails beautifully, and it'll flex with those nails without giving you any issues. Those types of clients generally will not necessarily respond well to acrylics and your dipping systems, your resin dipping systems, just because those systems tend to be quite hard and quite brittle. So their nails tend to flex away from the product, which will lead to issues. I think the system's a really good system in the sense that it's really great and fast to apply, in the sense that you get perfectly shaped nails every time you apply it. The flexibility means that even if they're rough on their nails, the nails won't necessarily crack or break, which is great. And I find that because we end up doing gel polish over the majority of our systems, this system's really versatile in that sense. If you get to the point where you can apply your float coat of Elastix over the top perfectly, you can just go straight in and apply your gel polish over the tacky layer of your elastic. So why I would choose this system over acrylic? Generally, clients with good, beautiful, natural nails, the system will respond really well to them. Clients with thin, brittle, weak nails, they will respond very well to the system because of the Elastix. Clients that are extremely hard on their nails and need a product that's physically hard might not necessarily respond well to the system, and that's going to come from trial and error. You're going to have to see what that client's lifestyle is like and what she's doing. So some clients just do need the physical hardness of certain products. So like your resin dip, I believe, is one of the hardest products. Like, I'm talking the actual hardness of it is the hardest product on the market. And then you have your acrylics, then you have your hard gels, and then all of your rubber bases, soft gels, those types of things fall at the softer end. But soft does not necessarily mean that it's not strong. It just means that it'll flex a lot more. And depending on what they're doing, flexibility could be good for them. So yeah, it's a hard question to answer. But I can confidently tell you that we have quite a few salons that's completely converted over to this system. So they used to do acrylics and maybe builder in the bottle overlays, so elastic overlays on its own, and they've now stopped doing their acrylics, and they haven't had issues switching their acrylic clients over to the system. We have a lot of clients doing like a trial run, like if they're not sure, when their client comes in, they remove one of their acrylic nails and then apply one of the Vogues, and then have that client go away for the next 3 to 4 weeks just wearing that one Vogue, and we find that the bulk of the clients actually then convert to Vogue from that, just because of the flexibility that they have with that. Okay, perfect, Jolene. I'm happy that helped. Okay, so the reason why I personally don't like soaking off completely every time is when you're soaking off, regardless of how gentle you are, we're all human and we all work in a back-to-back setup where we have clients coming in and going out, and we're trying to do our services as fast as possible. And when it comes to soaking off, we can get impatient and we could potentially cause damage to the natural nails. Even when you are extremely careful, when you're soaking product off, we're trying to push that product off of the nail. Once we've removed all of the product, we're filing onto the nail or buffing onto the nail or using our cuticle prep bits to remove the shine off of the nail. All of that removes layers of the nail. And if you're doing that constantly and you're not taking extreme care when you're doing that, the nails can become quite thin and brittle, especially on clients who naturally have thin nails and who naturally have very slow growing nails. So what I do, and because I take mine off quite regularly, is I actually e-file it down to a super thin coat of elastics on the natural nail. So I don't know if you can see on this one because I did this a few days ago. That's basically just my natural nail, but if I give it a wipe with acetone, you'll be able to see the difference between where my natural nail is and where the elastics is on the nail. So we'll give that a go and see if you guys can see. So see, everywhere where it's kind of like stayed like a normal color, everywhere else it went white. All of the white bits, that's my natural nail, but the rest is elastics. That is so thin that I can just go in and apply my normal base coat of elastics over the top of that and then continue on, which is what I'll do in a little while. But I quickly wanted to demonstrate to you how easy this is to do. So I'm just trying to, have a look and see which one I'd want to take off. Now, normally I would do this over my extractor fan, but because I'm doing a live and I'm talking through it, I'm gonna not switch my fan on so that you can actually hear me talk. What I have on this hand is I have the Vogue system, the long stilettos cut shorter into a coffin. But what I've actually done is I've done two coats. So I did a coat of elastics and I poured grapefruit, which is one of our colored acrylics, over the top, dusted it off, painted another coat of elastics, poured another coat of grapefruit, and then just gave that a light buff. So I actually have a dip system over this, the gel dip system over this. So it might cut a little bit different to just like the traditional tips with elastics and gel polish over the top. But when I go in to remove, I just go in with my tip cutter and I physically just chop that off, because the shorter I get it, the quicker the removal will go. Then I love to use my trusty gelinator. It's my favorite bit for pretty much everything at the moment. And I literally just go in. Oh, I apologize. That is on the wrong direction. I literally just go in and I start to take the product off. So please let me know if you guys can't see. I'll try my best to stay in picture. But the aim that I'm going for here is I'm trying to just get down to that base layer. So I'm trying to remove as much of my product as I possibly can. Without going through that base layer. And this is always easier to do on somebody else than it is to do on yourself. But the biggest advantage of doing this on yourself, and if you're not confident with this initially, practicing this on yourself is really good, because you can kind of feel how much pressure you can apply, and how much, oh, thank you, Jolene. My boy is has good taste. You can feel and see what it feels like when you're doing this. So initially, if you're not confident doing this, doing it on yourself teaches you a lot about this technique to ensure that you don't cause any damage to your nail, and that you can feel when you're applying too much pressure or if there's any heat buildup. Generally, if you're keeping it to 1, 2, 3 strokes in one spot, it shouldn't heat up too much. And especially with your specialty carbide bits like this one, your gelinator, you will find that they're designed to cut rather than like grind on the surface, which will help to reduce any heat that you could have on the nail. But stick to doing max 3 passes in one spot, move to another spot. You can always come back to that spot again, because that will help to just keep that heat down to a minimum. If you need to get closer to the cuticle area, don't stress about that too much. Obviously I don't have a lot of growth on this now, but we can go in with our cuticle prep bit and just get any product off that's not come off with our gelinator at that stage. Okay. Alright, so that's basically it down thin to just a base layer of elastic on that nail. So now all I will do is I'll go in and I'll shape my nail. And you will find that if you are doing your coffins and your stilettos and you're wanting to keep length on the natural nail when you're reapplying, that's perfectly fine, but you will have to taper the sides of your natural nail in to fit under the tip. So just bear that in mind. You're perfectly fine to grow that natural nail under the Vogues. You don't have to take the nail off. Just make sure that you're filing and shaping it so that the natural nail fits beautifully underneath. I like to just give it a quick little bit of a touch with my file just to make sure that I'm getting it nice and smooth. But you won't need to do too much. If depending on how smoothly you've removed the product with your e-file, you could literally just go in and give it a quick buff with your I love the purple sanding sponges, they work beautifully, but any of your buffers should work. And then you can just go in with your cuticle prep bit, be it your normal cuticle prep or be it your cuticle prep pro, whichever bit you prefer to use. I always prefer to just push back my cuticles with a cuticle pusher. If you like doing it with your e-file, you're more than welcome to do that. I just find I get a better and a more even push. Better and a more even push when I'm using my pusher, as opposed to just going straight in with my e-file, especially when I'm doing it on my own nails, because I find I really scrape nicely, you know, loosening all of the dead skin cells off. So I'm going in at a super low speed and just removing the shine off of the natural nail. And like I said, because I don't have much growth on this, and if I have any product that still needs to be debulked, I can do that with this bit around my cuticle area when needed. I'm actually now physically pushing against my skin and making sure that I'm exfoliating any dead skin cells off of that. Changing the rotation on my e-file. I'm going to go in and do the opposite direction, making sure that I remove any shine off of the nail and get to any product that I need to debulk or any lifted product. So that's what I do. So I won't touch this nail with acetone at all at the moment. So I don't need to soak off that last little bit of elastics that's on my natural nail because I'm just going to put a little bit of elastics on there in any case now. And I don't have any lifted product. So that's the biggest thing that you have to pay attention to when doing this technique, is to ensure that if you had any lifted product, that you're removing all of the lifted product, because we don't want to trap anything under lifted product or seal it in with our product. So if we give that a little bit of time to just evaporate, you can have a look to see how much is elastic and how much is natural now. Okay. And that's prepped, ready to go for me to now start my process. So if we size our tip, so very important, when you're sizing your tips, I need you to think about where the thickness and the strength is with your tips, so that when you go to do your float coat, that you make sure that you're getting the strength where you need it. But the other thing you have to bear in mind, and I hope you guys can see this, is you need, you need a gap between the tip and your natural nails. Okay, if you're pushing that tip down and there's no gap between the tip and the natural nail, and when you go to adhere your product, you're not adding any strength. So then you're basically just sticking a tip on your natural nail. You're not filling that gap with elastics. And it's that filled gap that actually give you the strength. So if you are finding that you have to take a tip and really push it down to make it fit, so like let's say we tried doing this one, which on face value might look like it's fitting. If I turn that to the side, I have no gap in between the tip and my product, which means that this will start to bend and flare and you won't have any strength to that tip. So you need to think of this as almost a finished product. And you're still going to do another coat of elastics over the top, or a float coat of elastics over the top. But this needs to be on the nail quite a substantial thickness, because that's the thing that gives you the strength. So if you're trying to adhere a tip and you're really pushing that down and you're flattening that gap onto the nail, your nails won't last and they will break. Okay. And the other thing you have to bear in mind, like I have fairly long skinny nail beds, but like if my nail bed was considerably shorter and I was sticking this tip down and I wanted to wear it at this full length, I would need to adjust that built-in apex quite a bit to ensure that that nail stayed where it was. And then bearing in mind, if let's say my nail bed was shorter and I went and I cut it, the sides on these tips, the closer you get to the back, the thinner the tips get, because that's just how they're designed. So you need to bear that in mind when you're doing your elastics float coat over the top, that we need to then add. So like if that nail bit was there and we've chopped it, we need to add a little bit of strength here to make sure that the nails can hold up the flexibility that it needs to. And when I say add strength, like we really just need to focus on the stress areas. So if I have this nail in place, I'm going to try and hold it so that you can see, and I push down on the front edge, so it's there, I push down on the front edge of it. Do you see that my nail turns white there? So for this length there where my nail turns white, that's where I need to put more product. That's my stress area where this nail will break or crack at this length for my nail. So I need to ensure that when I do my float coat, if I need to adjust the apex, which in this case I wouldn't really need to a lot, but if I needed to, I would be applying my strength, my apex, my height in this area here to ensure that I have the right strength for this length of nail. If my nail was shorter, if I were to do the almonds, whatever, that the length will affect where the apex will be, and you'll find that it'll probably just be a little bit lower. So generally, the longer the nails, the higher your apex will have to be, and you will find that it will generally start to move a little bit closer to the cuticle area. And you can literally test that on any person. So you just apply a little bit of pressure to the free edge, and there where the nail turns white, that's where your strength or your apex needs to be. To help maintain that nail and to give it the strength that it needs. And the longer that nail is, the larger and the higher your apex will have to be. Yeah. So I'm fairly happy with that size. I might just give it a little bit of an adjustment on the sides, just because my nails get skinnier closer to my cuticle area. So I find these ones can flare a little bit, and each shape will be different. You'll see with the Vogues, and you'll have to adjust them slightly different because their cuticle areas will be a little bit different. Now I like to keep a little bit of a gap at the back and then bridge that gap with my elastic, sealing the tip in and giving it additional strength. So I might just trim that a little bit over here and over here. Okay, fairly happy with that. It fits from side to side. I have a gap between the tip and my natural nail, which is what I want. So what I'll do now is we'll just sanitize that nail. Can't ever over sanitize the nail because we've been touching it. It's good to just sanitize it again. I'm gonna go in with a layer of sticky bond. And because I haven't applied nail prep, I'll have to do 2 layers of sticky bond. If you're using nail prep, you won't necessarily need 2 layers of sticky bond unless your client is really prone to lifting. Then I'd say still do 2 coats of sticky bond. But nail prep is an adhesion promoter, so it is a primer on its own. That's the primer we recommend to use with our resin dipping system. So if you're using a layer of nail prep, then you would only use 1 layer of sticky bond. If you're not using nail prep, you would do 2 coats of sticky bond, giving them just about 10 to 15 seconds in between the layers so that it dries. So sticky bond will stay sticky, hence the name. But the liquid will evaporate, and you can generally feel it on your natural nails when you're using it, because you feel the liquid evaporating, so it goes kind of like cool as it dries. Once we have that on, we're going to do a base coat layer of elastics. Now you don't have to do a super thick base coat layer of elastics when we're doing what we're doing today, which was filing down to that base layer, because we already have a little bit of elastics on there. Sorry, so elastics clear, and I didn't show you sticky bond, so I apologize. Sticky bond. I don't know if you guys are aware, but we have elastics in a few different base colors. So we have it in Ballet, which is a milky pink, Cover Pink, which is a cover pink, Ultimate Nude cover, which is a peachy cover, and then we have Ultimate Nude, which is a sheer peachy color. You can use any of those 5, so the clear and the 4 nude colors, to actually adhere your Vogue tips if you wanted to do it that way. Or you could potentially, if you wanted to conceal your natural nail, so let's say I had a big bruise, or like a splinter hemorrhage, or just a patchy natural nail, you could use any of the pinks as your base coat, and then to camouflage that layer, and then simply stick it down with your clear. So you'd be just camouflaging the base of the nail. You don't necessarily then have to use it to stick down to the clear. Now this coat of elastics can be as thin as you would do a gel polish base coat. You want to make sure that you get it nice and close to the cuticle area, but you're not touching the cuticles. And I'm just going to do a little bit of correction because I haven't removed my products perfectly evenly, and it's going to bother me when I'm sticking my tip down. But you really don't need to do this because the elastics and fills the gap, it'll fill any smoothness that you need doing. So not a lot, you don't need a lot to go onto that nail. It's the similar consistency or thickness as you would with your gel polish base coats. Sorry, my brain will start working at some stage. Then you want to make sure that you're doing a full cure with this. So I'm going to go in and do a 60-second cure. So next I'm just going to etch up the inside of my tip. Normally you as a nail technician will be doing this when your client is curing their, just trying to find my draw bit. When your client's curing their base layer of elastic, or if your client has come through for a soak and you did opt to use acetone, you could be doing that, doing this whilst they're soaking. Okay. Some people, some clients, just when they have quiet times, just take their boxes and just etch up all of the insides of their tips so that they're already done, and they don't have to do it them individually as the clients, whilst the clients are there. So you could either use your little cuticle away ball bit, or you could use the fine sanding rollers over your mandrel. You need to make sure that you're using a grinding bit. So a diamond bit or a sanding band grinds the surface. Any carbide or ceramic bit, they tend to cut, and you don't want to use a cutting bit because you're going to remove too much of the inside of your tip. And you could potentially warp the inside of your tip if you used the wrong e-file bits. So make sure that you're only using either a diamond or a sanding band to etch the inside of your tip. Pay attention to detail here. If you have a little bit of a gap anywhere, if you're not etching it up, you could have some lifting. Okay, so important to make sure that you're doing a good job at this stage. And then again, because I'm super pedantic, I like to go in and just apply a little bit of sticky bond to the inside of my tip as well. This just ensures that if I've missed any area that I haven't etched up, that the sticky bond will help my elastic stick to that. This is an optional step. You don't have to do this to get it to work. It'll work fine. I'm just letting you know that that's what I do with mine. I do from time to time also pre-blend the cuticle area. So I take my file beforehand and I pre-blend it. If you saw my live on how to adjust like a tip so that it sits straight on a client that has nails that don't grow straight, you would have seen me talk about that and why I recommend doing that. But generally, if you're adjusting the tips in any way, like I said, they're thinner at the back and they go gradually thicker the more you go. So if you've adjusted it at the back, it will be a little bit thicker at that back. So it's good to pre-blend it. If you struggle blending the tips in, you could just use your file to pre-blend it before it goes onto the nail. But that's completely up to you. If you're using the blending cone, you'll find that you won't have any issues, and then the acetone's your best friend, but we'll get into that if you need to blend further, because the acetone just helps to soften that gel beautifully and just melt it a little bit, making the blending even easier. All right, so I'm going to do a super thin coat of elastics everywhere where I've etched the nail, the tip, and then we want to put a little dollop of love on the inside of this tip. What that dollop of love does is that's the bit that fills your apex gap. The more you do these nails, the better you'll get at knowing how much gel to put into the tip to get it to fill for different lengths. Initially, you'll have a little bit of spillage, but that's not an issue. It's easily cleaned up with either your e-file, or if you can manage to not cure the spillage, you could clean that up with a gel brush. I have my LED torch taped to my work light, probably not the most professional look, but it's hands-free and doesn't move while you're curing. Oh yeah, that's good. That's a good idea, Amy. Alright, so I'm going to switch my torch on, and I'm sorry, I'm going to be off camera for this little bit, but as I explained a little bit earlier, this is kind of how I use it and how it works best when I'm doing it on my own. So I'm going to place my tip at the cuticle area, pushing it down, making sure that I'm moving that air bubble down towards the free edge, making sure that my tip is nice and straight. And then when I'm happy with that, is it nice and straight? When I'm happy, I go under my lamp, my little torch, to flash cure. You only need to do this for about 10 seconds when you're using your clear. But if you were to use like your ultimate nude cover or your cover pink, I'd probably say you'd be good or better off doing at least a 15-second flash cure, just because there's more pigment in those gels, which will mean that it'll just take a little bit longer to cure. So it's better to be safe than sorry, and under cure and let go, and then you have a little bubble. So 10 seconds for your clear, and I'd say 15 to about 15 seconds for your covers or your ultimate nude cover pink, or cover pinks and ultimate nudes, sorry. Then you'll go in, and you would generally apply this to all 5 fingers. Once you've flash cured all 5, you will go in and do a full cure under your normal lamp, European speciality. This is extremely important. If you forget to do this, by the time you go to blend your cuticle area, you might find that your tips lift. So if you're finding that that's happening, or if you forget to do this at all and they're not lifting whilst you're blending them, but your client goes away and she comes back and she in 2 or 3 days time has lifting, it could indicate that you forgot to do this step. So this is extremely important. That flash cure does not fully cure your elastics, and which will mean that your staying power of your tips won't be as good. So you need to make sure that you're performing a full cure once your tips are adhered. So we're just giving that a little bit of time. All right, so if you wanted to change the shape, you could definitely do that at this stage. So I might, oh sorry, I have my tip cutters. I might just give that a little bit of a cut, sorry, off camera, because I'm gonna change all of these in any case. Yeah, if you needed to completely change the shape, you could. So if you wanted like more of an almond, you potentially could do that, or more of a round. We obviously have all of the different shapes to make it easier for you so you don't have to necessarily file so much, but I can appreciate that lengthwise they're not necessarily all perfect. But yes, you can definitely shape and file these tips the same way you would with any traditional tip. Okay, so I'm just going to do that for the time being. If you don't have an e-file and you're using the system, you can definitely use the sanding sticks to etch up the inside of a tip. So if you grab the inside of the tip and you grab your sanding stick, this can be used to file the inside of the tip and make sure that you're etching up the inside. If you're doing this method, I would definitely recommend using sticky bond inside the tip, just to ensure that you get a good adhesion, because it can be a little bit trickier and especially a little bit more time consuming doing it this way. Obviously using an e-file is considerably faster. You could then just go in with your normal hand file to blend around the cuticle area, but I'm just going to go in with my Vogue blending cone, which works a treat for this. Go in at high speed, because again this is a speciality bit, which means that it functions better at high speed. If you have this bit going at slow speed, it'll be uncomfortable for your client and it'll be less effective. So you're going to feel like your bit's not doing anything and your client's going to feel uncomfortable. The higher you have it, the more it just glides and cuts. The slower you have it, the more it wants to grip onto the nail. So very important with your specialty bits like this, your Vogue cone, your gelinator, all of those bits, they just function better at high speed. Now, the reason why we recommend to leave a gap at the cuticle area is it makes blending that cuticle area so much better and easier. So you can see there that I don't have any bumps. Oh, sorry. I don't have any bumps at the back of my nail at all. Which means that I can now seamlessly add my elastics and my color without having a little wall. So as the nails grow out, I don't have little walls at the back when we do this. If you were to apply this tip all the way to the back and you try and blend it, it's considerably harder. You'll find that you might cut your client around the cuticle areas, and you'll also find that once that nail starts growing out in about a week's time, you'll have quite a big bump at the back. The other nice thing about leaving the gap, remember when we applied the elastics to the base coat, as a base coat, we took it as close to the cuticle area without touching as possible. So now when I'm using my blending cone or my file to blend the cuticle area, I'm not touching that natural nail at all. I have that base layer of elastics protecting my natural nail. And the third benefit to having that little bit of a gap is now when I go in to apply my elastics layer, I'm physically sealing my tip in from the back to the front. So I can't get any lifting in this area when I do it that way. So this is the biggest reason why we preach leaving a gap at the back and then bridging that gap with your elastics. Okay. Now remember how we said that having a different length will mean that your apex might move a little bit. So I have the length that I have and I want, and I have applied my tip so I can test to see where my apex needs to go. So when I push down on my natural nail, do you see that my apex is now a little bit more towards the center of the nail? If I turn my nail to the side, you can see that my high point is here. But we might adjust that just slightly with our elastics, which I'll talk you through in a second. So if you didn't have the blending cone, you could definitely go in with your file and just blend that tip into the natural nail, which I don't really have to do because I've already used my blending cone. We'll give it a good dust. We've had a little bit of spillage at the bottom, but not a lot. What we'll have to do when we wipe this nail is make sure that we just remove any tacky layer on the bottom, because your elastics there will have a little bit of tacky layer. But I'm going to go in with my acetone firstly and just give that a wipe. So what the acetone does is it helps to prep your tip without having you to file or buff it. You can most definitely file and buff it if you wanted to do it that way, but the acetone's a nice little cheat to prep that tip ready for elastics. The other thing that you can find with your acetone is at your cuticle area, if you're struggling to blend, you can go in with your acetone and just deliberately give that cuticle area a good wipe, okay? In doing so, you're blending that tip into that elastic layer underneath, which means that you'll have an even more seamless graduation from your cuticle area up towards the tip. Okay. So I'm just going to grab another nail wipe just with some sunny spray or gel finishing wipe on it and just give the tip a wipe at the bottom, because I did have a little bit of spillage. Like I said, with more practice you get better at it and you get fewer and fewer spills. Now we're going to go in with our float coat of elastics. What is a float coat of elastics? It's not a thin base coat layer like we did as a base for before we applied the tips on the natural nail. This is the coat that's meant to give you strength, and it's the coat that you're meant to use to adjust the apex if your client needs it. So what you can do is you can go in, especially if you're new to gel and you haven't really done a lot of gel extensions in your life, it's good to go in and just do a thin coat of elastics first. This is what we call a wetting layer. So our wetting layer will mean that it kind of like sets down the map for where our floated elastics will go. So just super thin, making sure that we're covering everywhere we want the elastics to go. And then what I do is I go in, I pick up my gel and I try and get it to like one side of my brush. I hope you guys can see that. I have a little bit more on the one side of my brush. So what I do in a case like this is I pop that little dollop down. See how I've just popped it down? And now I'm just going to float it into place. Now see how I'm adjusting the height of my apex by doing that. If you need a little bit more, go in, pop a little bit more down. That's probably too much, but for demonstration purposes, I want to show you. And I want to specifically make this one bumpy so that I can show you that we can actually go in and file it. So see how I've concentrated it more towards the back and concentrated it more towards the sides where that tip was thinner, which will mean that this will add strength to that tip. And now what I'm doing is I'm turning my hand over and I'm helping gravity pull the gel down towards the center of the nail. Yes, Jolene, you can definitely use colored acrylics over the top of this. If you were going to do liquid and powder acrylic, you could skip this elastic layer and just go straight in and do your acrylic, because that will then be your strength that you're adding to it. If you wanted to use your colored acrylic as a color like you would with your traditional dips, you could use your elastics, paint a thin layer of that on, pour your color acrylic into the wet elastics and then cure it for 60 seconds, dust off your excess. Now see how high that's gone by turning it over, but see how it kind of just smooths it out, making sure that you get the high point where you need it. Okay, I am gonna cure that because I'm gonna show you that if your elastics layer, this elastic layer, ends up bumpy, or if you're finding that your apex isn't where you wanted it, you could still go in and correct that shape. So I'm going to do a full cure of 60 seconds. Sorry, I should have my lamp there. If you find that you turn the hand over and that apex placement's perfect, but you're scared that it's going to move before you get it in, you can also use your LED torch to just give that a quick flash cure, keeping it in spot before it goes into the lamp. It just depends on how hot the day is, so I don't know if you guys have noticed, but elastics, the viscosity of elastics can get affected by temperature quite a bit. So on hotter days it'll be a lot runnier, on colder days it'll be considerably thicker. So sometimes you just need that little bit of a helping hand, so your torch can help with that, especially on hot days, when you need it to just stay put where you've just put it. These torches are so handy. I use them for everything now, not just for my Vogues. Okay, so once that comes out, leave my base behind. Once that comes out, we can have a look at it. So you can see that my elastic coat is not perfect. It's not smooth all the way. So if I were to just apply gel polish over the top of this, I'll have a bumpy finish. So I want to avoid that. So I'm just gonna use my nail wipe to remove, and my gel finishing wipe to remove the tacky layer of my elastic. And then I'm going to go in with, you can go in with your e-file, you can go in with your hand file, whatever you generally use to finish file, and then follow your filing technique, and if you have one, to ensure that you file the nails all the same way. You could definitely use your e-file, and just be careful with your elastics because it is a softer gel. It files extremely quickly, so just be careful that you don't file through it completely. As you saw at the start of this video, when we were filing the tip down to get it to sit where we want it and to get it down to that thin base layer, it went fairly quickly, so just be careful when you're using your e-file. Alright, so I thought elastics change consistency, glad to know I'm not crazy. No, you're not crazy. Definitely temperature affects it. So if we have a look at this nail now from all sides, we want to make sure that it's evenly thick, that it's nice and straight, and that we don't have any unnecessary bumps. So I'm not very happy with my cuticle area there, so I might just grab my blending cone and just give that a quick file. Too much talking sometimes. It's the fun thing about lives, is I concentrate so much about talking because I'm so scared of dead space. If you've ever seen any of my lives, you would know that. So too much talking sometimes means that I don't pay attention and then I'm not happy with it. And I stick my Vogue skew, or I put too much product somewhere where I didn't want it. Alright, so I'm fairly happy with that. So I'm just gonna go in and dust and sanitize before I go in with my color. Now, if you have filed your elastics like I just did, that's perfect, ready for your gel polish to go on in 2 coats, and then apply your top coat over. So I hope that this has cleared up a few things for a few of you, especially the ones that have found they struggle with like the float coat and understanding the float coat. I hope that made it a little bit clearer so that you can understand what we mean by a float coat. And bearing in mind that at the end of the day, this is still a professional system that needs a professional to adjust it to each client's needs. Not every client's nail shape, nail bed, nail condition is going to be the same. And unfortunately, that does mean that we need to adjust the system from time to time to suit those clients. But the Vogue system has been designed with all of those factors in mind, making it considerably easier for you to do these things if you needed to. Can dip powder be used over these? Yes, Robin, I mentioned this a little bit earlier in the live. What I have on this hand, on the rest of the fingers, this is a Vogue stiletto stuck down the way you normally would, cut down to shape a coffin. And then instead of doing my float coat of elastics over the top like I did with this one, I did a thin base coat layer of elastics. I poured my dip powder over. I cured it for 60 seconds, dust off the excess, repeated that step again. So elastics, poured the grapefruit over the top, cured it for 60 seconds, dust off the excess. I like to just pop a little bit of no wipe top coat over the top, cure it so that I don't have to wipe it. And then I just filed it slightly, just so that there was no bumps or lumps, and then just apply top coat over. So that's what I have on these nails here. So 2 coats of elastics with your dip powder poured over the elastics, a coat of no wipe top coat, buffed, and then just no wipe top coat over the top. So you can definitely do that. Just bear in mind when you do this, it changes the flexibility quite considerably. So this becomes really, really hard when you do this. So for clients that's hard on their nails, that bang them around a lot, you will find that they might get some cracking when you do that. Like I have a tiny little crack there which I normally never get with my Vogues. But because the dip powders with elastic comes out so much harder than it normally would, I've had a little bit of cracking in that area there, but it's very mild, it's very superficial, and yeah, it was a test to see how I could go with it. So you could definitely do that, and we have heaps of clients doing that because they have a lot of dip colors, and they don't necessarily want to not use them anymore, so you could definitely do that. Oh, thank you, Amy. I'm glad you found that helpful. If you're not watching this live, please feel free to still pop your comments in the comment section. I will try my best to get back to you as soon as you ask a question, but please feel free to ask any questions. I am absolutely in love with the system, and it is a superb system that can definitely be used on pretty much all of your clients. You just need to learn the ins and outs and the tricks and tricks of the trade, or the tips and tricks, to just help with certain nail shapes and certain nail clients to make sure that we're getting the right strength out of it. Okay, have a good day, ladies and gents. Oh, that's good to hear, Robin. I'm so glad. And then I'll talk to you soon. So I'll try and do a few more lives, especially in the Planet Vogue group. So if you're part of the Planet Vogue support group, please feel free to join that. That's a group dedicated specifically to this system. Alessa will be doing a few demos too. And it's an awesome support community. You can jump on there. There's everybody that's using Vogue. So, well, not everybody that's using it's on there, but everybody on there is using Vogue. And they're really quite helpful if you have any questions. So if you're not part of that Facebook group, just search Planet Vogue support, and that should come up, and just join the group. Go. Have a good day.